Hi! Little disclaimer before we get started with looking at the cards today. The deck that I will be showing is the Somnia Tarot, which features people covered in cloths. Sometimes their faces are covered, sometimes their bodies are covered, sometimes they have ropes around them, perhaps around their wrists or their bodies, sometimes even their necks. So if that imagery is disturbing to you or triggering or just really gives you the creeps, please be warned moving forward. Hello there, Tangy here. We're going to talk about my method for secular past life readings today. In this video, I'm going to do a full walkthrough of how I've come to develop my own method for past life readings. I'm going to walk through it and explain it as much as I can so that hopefully you can do your own past life readings and get some sense out of it. Either get some sense or have some fun with it, really. Both are valid. Both are fun. So first, let me talk about how I came to develop my past life reading method. And in the meantime, I'm going to flip over some cards to have something to look at while I talk. So, up until this point, this year, I've never had much experience with past lives or really of anything supernatural. I am more of a agnostic kind of person, and my practice, my tarot outlook and my witchy outlook is more skeptical and more atheist or agnostic, really. So for me, I try to see things through a psychological or a scientific lens or a skeptical lens. I don't really believe in anything, more supernatural or more fantastical. So when it came to past lives, I understood them kind of as a fictional or a fantastical concept. Like, for example, in one of my favorite animes, Sailor Moon, there is a lot of talk about past lives there because Sailor Moon and her lover, Tuxedo Mask, were actually married in a past life and things like that. And then they were reincarnated to become like the Sailor Guardians of the current day, things like that. But I couldn't really understand or conceptualize the idea of past lives for myself in this normal world where I don't have superpowers and I don't really believe in having like a fated lover or anything like that. So it took me a little bit of time and some exploring to figure out what even is out there. So I read the Cosmovisions Oracle book and learned about how some people think of past lives that way, or at least how that creator, James Eads, conceptualized past lives. So the theory that I've come to skeptically accept is through doing a past life reading, I am connecting to a past lifetime or a different set of experiences in the hopes that I can learn something from that lifetime or from those experiences. So for me, it's similar to how I might read a story, a myth, a fable. Connecting to a past lifetime or a past set of experiences is the same way I would try to read about any story, about any person or any legend or any story, basically fictional or non-fictional, to try to glean meaning from it and then apply those lessons to my own life. For me, I mention skeptically or secularly accept it because, and I do want to give, a disclaimer that if you have actual beliefs in past lives, like this is not a knock against you. My theory is I'm trying to understand how people have dealt with and worked with the idea of past lives, but also trying to put a skeptical spin on it so that I can accept it for myself as well. That being said, skeptically, I'm taking this all as, well, it could be true or it could not be true. Because I'm looking at this from a skeptical or a secular lens, for me, the ultimate purpose or the intention isn't to discern whether this was an actual past life or not, but more to weave an interesting story, for an interesting reading experience, and most importantly, to turn this into a learning lesson for me at the end. So to reiterate, again, it's not about it being real or not, it's about it being meaningful, which is something that I try to weave into my whole tarot practice overall. And I'm sure many people try to do that. They do their witchy or tarot practice in a way that tries to be useful overall. I will also say that the past life reading method that I'm going to show you is, it's not something that I expect someone to pick up or like get good at it right away. The good news is that overall it's meant to be fun. You can practice with it and you can have fun with it. For me, when I did past life readings this past October, I had like 30 requests. So I got through like 30 different readings. And so I had a lot of practice in a very short span of time, but it was fun practice. It was very fun to apply myself to the reading and try to think about, how to weave a story together and how to create useful messages and how to deliver a reading to someone. So this method that I'm going to show you is, I find it very helpful for practicing various tarot reading techniques as well, and various storytelling techniques. It's just fun practice overall. And that's like the fun of it, right? Like it's all in good practice and it's fun to read about. So that's how I think tarot should be. So, to the next section. What you'll need. You will need a tarot deck that you find easy to find meaning in. Of course, this is your reading, it's your practice. You can do any deck that you want, but if you're trying to follow along with me, I would recommend pulling out a tarot deck that you find easy to find meaning in. My preference is the Somnia Tarot, and here's why. I really like that these people, first of all, I prefer reading with people over animals or other spacious or abstract concepts, and I prefer having people that are faceless too. I find that the Somnia Tarot is really helpful for me in connecting to the idea, the concept of a past life, because these figures, they're people, but they're also abstract. I don't feel as tied to like modern day imagery or any sort of specific time period imagery. So the timelessness of this deck, both in the environment and in the people, makes me feel like this is an easy deck for me to read with, especially in connection with past lives. So I also like that with these figures like this too, I don't get as bogged down in like gender or age or people demographic. Like I'm not worried about what age this person is or what gender they are or any other human biases that could play into me reading these cards. So, and again, like I mentioned, like the vibe is generally timeless. Like I don't see any technology here. So it's easier for me to imagine that these could be representative of people in any time period, not just in the 2000s or the 90s with like, a lot of technology and stuff. So that is why I prefer the Somnia Tarot for past life readings. I have not attempted past life readings with any other deck yet, but I feel like since I have this deck, I'm just going to keep using this one as my go-to deck for past life readings. Also, if this is your first time doing readings like this, I would recommend taking notes, but that is a general tarot practice note, not just for this method. Next section, the structure of the reading. So the way that I put together this reading, it's a combination of a couple of spread positions and freeform conversing with your deck. The two questions we ask at the beginning and at the end are, tell me about a past life that is relevant to me today, and what is a lesson that this past life is passing on to me today? So again, we open the reading with, tell me about this past life. The bookend question is, what is a lesson that this past life is passing on? And then between that, we're all asking follow-up questions and basically just conversing with the deck. It's back and forth. So let me lay out the cards as an example of what I'm saying. I'll show you two versions. One is a simplified version and one is my slightly more complex version. So to start with the simplified version, tell me about a past life that is relevant to me today. And I would draw one card and I would read that card in relation to that question. Then I would ask a follow-up question based off of this card here. I might pull one card. I like to pull two cards though, because why not? If you want to keep things simple, you can definitely pull one card for each follow-up question. If you want to hone your practice a little bit more or just test yourself a little bit more, you can draw two cards or even more cards. But for now, I would draw two and I would read them blending together in relation to the follow-up question that I asked here. Now at this point, I can ask another follow-up question. I could ask it about our original theme here. I could ask it about this question here. I could ask any other question. Some people like to read about their careers, their relationships, whether they were happy. There's lots of topics related to a past lifetime or a set of experiences that we could ask about. So basically, I would just ask another follow-up question. I would draw maybe two more cards, because again, I like to do my multiple cards blending together meaning. And then lastly, we'll go to my bookend question, which is, what is a lesson that this past life is passing on to me today? And I would draw probably one more card. Again, you can draw any number of cards. The reason why I like to do this is because it creates this inverted triangle shape. Isn't it so pretty? It's really just for aesthetics. A triangle has no meaning or relevance to the past life. I just like this red shape. So that is the structure of the reading. Tell me about a past life that is relevant to me today, and then follow-up questions, and then what is the lesson that this past life is passing on to me today? Now, for the sake of demonstration, let me show you my more complex reading that still achieves basically the same goal. So the first question, tell me about a past life that is relevant to me today. Now I draw 3 cards. With these 3 cards, it's an interesting exercise because then I could choose to read these, tie them all together into one single message. I could try to read them as like an early life, midlife, late life. I could try to read this card in conjunction to this card and then in conjunction with this card. So this is what I mean when I say this method helped me practice a lot about how to blend card meanings together and how to read cards together. Then I would ask some follow-up questions. And for the follow-up question, I would do 2 cards. And then I'd be like, wow, what an interesting answer. And then I would ask another follow-up question. Again, I could ask about any of these cards here. I could ask about this follow-up question. So, just another follow-up question. And I would do 2 more cards. And then I'd be like, wow, what an interesting answer. What an interesting expansion on this past life we have. Now let me ask another follow-up question, because why not, right? So 2 more cards. And now at the end, we'll go to our bookend question, which is, what is a lesson that this past life is passing on to me today? And then lastly, I would draw 3 cards for that question. So you can see here, I've got my sort of inverted triangle shape as well. I'm just stopping here because 3 rows is a lot, but if you had more time and more brain energy for reading, you could do a lot more questions. You could just keep going in this fashion. As long as you have the first question and the last question set, I feel like the middle is all whatever you want it to be. 3 is just a nice number. I feel like we really like the number 3. So I like that I'm starting with 3 cards. I'm ending with 3 cards. I like that this way. It also lets me ask 3 follow-up questions, 3 sets of 2 cards. So it just feels very, very magical and very holistic that way, all the 3s popping up. So that's an example of my past life reading layout and structure. Now, I hope I am making sense so far and that you're with me so far. Let's go ahead and do a walkthrough of a sample reading. So the way that I like to pull cards, especially with this deck, is anywhere randomly in the middle, because sometimes I fear that by shuffling overhand or riffle shuffling, I fear that there are going to be clumps of cards that are always going to be sticking together. So I like to pull randomly from the deck at any point. But let's walk through a sample reading. Let's go ahead and start with our first question, which is, tell me about a past life that is relevant to me today. And I want to mention, the reason why I've worded it that way, tell me about a past life that is relevant to me today, is to make room for the idea that there could be bunches and hunches of lifetimes that we have lived through. However, right now we just want to connect to something that is relevant to us. So it primes our mind and it gets us ready to receive something and try to make sense of that thing right now. So let's draw a single card for that. The 8 of Swords. I'll put that right here. So we're starting off with the 8 of Swords. Because the question that we're starting with is tell me about, it is so broad and it leaves room for so much interpretation. So the way that I like to read it is perhaps this is a general theme, a recurring theme throughout this past life or this past, set of experiences. So the 8 of Swords, I see someone who feels surrounded, kind of like this person who is surrounded by like all these swords, all these like almost like threatening forces around them. So perhaps this person was constantly in situations where they felt like they were not in control, or they felt like it was overwhelming, or they felt very trapped. Since I'm doing a walkthrough, I will kind of just go as surface level as I can. But when you're doing these for yourself or for other people, when you have the time to actually go really deep, there could be a lot of really interesting story ideas or storytelling things that you could come up with for each card. So I'm just going to go with the idea of this person has felt a lot of trappedness, just to keep things simple, a lot of trappedness throughout their life. So now I'm going to figure out a follow-up question that I want to ask in relation to this card, the 8 of Swords. So maybe one thing I want to ask, I'm going to keep all my who, what, when, or why, how questions in mind. The question I want to ask is how. So how did I feel trapped? What kinds of situations did I feel trapped in? Did I feel like constricted in? So let me pull 2 cards. I really don't want to shuffle this more than I have to, so I'm just going to draw without shuffling. So let's draw one here, and let's draw this one. So the follow-up question I asked was, how did I feel trapped? So first, just looking at the imagery, I see that the Knight of Wands is facing away from the 10 of Coins. And I know that the 10 of Coins can signify legacy, not just legacy, but it makes me think about family heirlooms, family traditions, family expectations even. And I see the Knight of Wands is turning away from the 10 of Coins here. So it makes me think already that perhaps I was a person who had a lot of energy and a lot of fire in me, and I didn't want to be bound by family traditions. I'm facing away from the family traditions. It almost feels like if I were to take the card literally, and this is another fun part of the tarot exercise, is that you can take the cards as literally as you want, because at the end of the day, this is a chance for imagination, for storytelling. So I see a treasure box here, so maybe I want to take that literally too. Perhaps there was a family treasure or a family business that I was supposed to take over, and I didn't want to. I didn't feel like I was the right fit. I didn't feel like it was something I wanted. I didn't feel like it was something that I wanted to put my energy towards. I wanted to put my energy towards other things. So that's an example of a follow-up question and pulling cards to answer that question. Now, let's do another follow-up question. I could ask about the Eight of Swords again. I could ask about the Knight of Wands. I could ask about the Ten of Coins. I could ask about a different topic overall. Let's ask about the Knight of Wands. If I didn't want to do family business stuff or family things, then what did I want to do? Let's see. Let's draw this card here. Then let's draw this card here. All right, so we've got the King of Swords and the Ace of Wands. So the King of Swords, the first thing that comes to mind is education. Sometimes the swords can represent thoughts, sometimes they represent reasoning, sometimes education. So for me, I'm just gonna take it literally. Like perhaps I wanted to put my brain more to use. Perhaps this legacy, this business was something that felt very old school, very set in their ways. Perhaps I wanted to be in a leadership position where I was able to use my mind more and possibly make more decisions. The Ace of Wands also gives me the idea of wanting to start something new. Going back to the Eight of Swords, the constant energy or the theme of my life was feeling trapped or feeling constricted. So perhaps what the Knight wanted to put their energy towards was almost freedom in a way. I see freedom, not just freedom, but perhaps trying to rise above what made them feel trapped. Perhaps trying to understand their situation better, understand why they were put in the situation in the first place. And then with the Ace of Wands, it gives me the idea of wanting to blaze a new path forward. So to summarize the reading so far, have someone who has felt trapped, someone who possibly wanted to do something different than follow the family business. What that different thing was they wanted to get smarter, get wiser, and then blaze a new path forward. So let's go ahead and bookend our reading with the ending question, which is, what is a lesson that this past life has for me today? There's two ways that you could connect this lesson. One is, this past life failed to learn this lesson, so you, me, current day, must learn from their mistakes, what they didn't do. The other way you could look at this is, this past life did this super well, and you too can have this energy because it was once a part of you. So what is the lesson that is passing on from this past life? We've got the Knight of Coins. Oh, interesting. So I say interesting because right off the bat, I see that this Knight of Wands was turning away from this coins here. But in the current life, we have the Knight of Coins, who seems to be turning towards this Ten of Coins. And it's the same suit too, the coins and the coins. So one thing that comes to mind as advice or the lesson here is to work hard. I feel like it's a very surface level thing, but again, this is a walkthrough, it's a demonstration. If my first answer that comes to mind is work hard, how do I tie the answer of work hard to the rest of the spread? What does working hard have to do with the past life reading that we were just reading about? So something that I might say or want to think about is make sure that you've given something a fair shot and really turned over every stone and done your best at it before you write it off and say that it's not for you. And I mention that because I know the Knight of Coins to be someone who is pretty meticulous. This Knight of Coins would count every blade of grass in the field if they were asked to, whereas the Knight of Wands might be like, well, that's too freaking boring. I'm not going to do that. I have much better use of my time and my energy. So I feel like a lesson that can pass on to this life is to make sure that I'm being thorough in my work rather than being in a hurry to rush off and to try to do something new and different. And also passing it back to this past life, I'm noticing that besides this Knight of Wands, like these other cards tend to be very stable. Like this person's sitting, this person is sitting. So I think that there is a message for me to remember that sometimes things need for me to sit and be slow. I cannot be in Knight of Wands energy all the time, especially when the situation does not call for it. There are going to be times when it does call for Knight of Wands energy, but there are going to be times when it calls for Knight of Coins energy, when I need to sit and be thorough and just chug along. It reminds me of those times when I feel like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not making any progress. I feel like I'm in this Eight of Swords moment or this Eight of Swords phase where nothing's happening and I'm wondering if life is even progressing or if I'm even moving forward. So the Knight of Coins does remind me that I'm always moving forward in some way. And sometimes that energy is what is needed and just what's most prominent. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So that is an example of a past life reading. I hope it was helpful. I'm going to quickly show you how the more complex, the fuller spread goes. All right. I'm not sure if I'll walk through this reading as deeply or thoroughly as I did the other one, but I hope it is still helpful for you. So let's go ahead and start with our question again. The first question, tell me about a past life that is relevant to me today. So let's draw this card. And then this card. And this one. All right. So we're starting off with the King of Cups, the Knight of Coins showing up again, and the Eight of Wands. So what I see here is someone sitting down, but then there's some movement here. And then finally, the Eight of Wands, I see a lot of reckless movement with the chandelier moving around. So I could read this as, again, early, mid, late life. That is a pretty straightforward way of reading it. I could read this as one message altogether. A technique that I learned from Tom Benjamin is to pick the most active card and then revolve the other cards around that card. So what feels like the most active card to me? I would say the Knight of Coins. So I'm going to try that technique. What is the most active card? And then revolve the other cards around that one. So the Knight of Coins feels the most active to me, mainly because this person is sitting down. Then this person here is actually sitting down as well. So the Knight of Coins seems to be moving away from the King of Cups and more towards the Eight of Wands. Maybe my past life, this past self that we're tapping into, was someone who was in transition of sorts. Transitioning from a position, a job position, or I want to say a job position, let's say, where they were a high-ranking executive, where they managed a lot of things, this king energy. But then they wanted to transition to almost freedom in a sense, almost chaos. It's like they wanted to, move from being a high-ranking executive to chaos, maybe be free a little bit. Maybe they had a lot of responsibilities and a lot of managing that they wanted to move away from. So again, if I wanted to go deeper, I could try to think more about Knight of Coins, why the coins showed up versus the other knights, why the cups showed up versus other suits. But as this is a freeform reading and I want to focus more on just telling a story, sometimes I just want to go for like the first thing that comes to mind, because this is a storytelling exercise as well. All right, so let's ask a follow-up question. Tell me about this King of Cups here. I want to know more about what kind of responsibilities, what was I doing as the King of Cups executive? And like I mentioned with the follow-up questions, I could have asked about the Knight of Coins. I could have asked about the Eight of Wands. I could have asked about anything. So I wanted to know more about the King of Cups. Wow, the Knight of Wands. Okay, the Knights are coming back into this reading. So the Knight of Wands and the High Priestess. I know my lights are a bit bright. I hope these cards are still kind of visible here. So, okay, so interesting. We have the knights facing each other now. I don't know what that means yet, but let's see what it means. I'm seeing that there was a bit of restlessness here. Again, I'm associating the Knight of Wands with restlessness. And again, the Knight of Wands is on the left side facing away from this here. I see similarities between the High Priestess and this card. It seems like both of them have to be responsible and sitting down and like receiving information. Whereas this Knight of Wands it feels like, well, I don't want to do that. That is not interesting to me. I want to do other things, wandsy things. So right out the bat, gives you the idea that this King of Cups energy was not something that I enjoyed. And or maybe I enjoyed it, but ultimately I wanted to do something else. Instead of being receptive and being, having to receive information and having to manage people, I wanted to follow my own impulses. I wanted to do my own thing. So now let me ask another follow-up question. Let's do relationships, because I know people like to ask about relationships. So now I want to ask about relationships. I could try to formulate a specific question, but I could also just keep it open-ended. So I'm just going to say, tell me about my relationships. And if you so wish, you could word your question to be something like, tell me about an important relationship. Tell me about my primary relationship. So open-ended, I'm just going to say, tell me about my relationships in general. And I'm leaving it open-ended to talk about my relationships with anyone, whether they were platonic, familial, romantic, etc. How were my relationships with other people? Let's pull these up here. So we've got the Moon and the Eight of Coins. So something that I'm seeing so far is there was a part of me in my relationships that was focused on working. And I almost want to say inner work. And I'm saying that just because seeing this person in the moon facing this way, but then the Eight of Coins person is facing also this way, it makes me feel like someone in the relationship, maybe both, but someone in the relationship was focused on work. I'm also seeing with the moon that there's an element of unclarity here. Perhaps not really confusion, just unclarity. Perhaps in some relationships, it wasn't really clear what I wanted. But regardless, even if it wasn't clear what I wanted, I still was putting in the work to maintain those relationships. So again, lots of ways, lots of interpretations that you could go, fun storytelling exercise. That's one interpretation. But let me ask another follow-up question related to this then. Let's see. Maybe I want to ask, how did the other person or the other people in my relationships feel about me? All right, King of Swords and 10 of Cups. I swear, the King of Swords... Okay, how did we literally get 3 cards from our past reading? I shuffled and I pulled from various parts in the deck. That is uncanny. Okay, King of Swords and 10 of Cups. So the question was, how did the other people in my life feel about me? King of Swords and 10 of Cups. So perhaps the way that other people saw me, they saw me as someone who was always trying to be wise and be smart about things. 10 of Cups, I'm seeing this element of water kind of pouring into each other here. It's like these cups are all sharing their emotions, sharing their water. Perhaps even though I may have come off harsh or stern at times, ultimately people were happy with me. The harshness and the sternness does make sense as well with this 8 of Coins again, because this 8 of Coins does seem very neutral, very unbiased. With this king as well, these kings do remind me of someone who is also unbiased, because kings have to be unbiased to be good leaders. And I'm seeing that with the Knight of Coins as well. The Knight of Coins I also associate with unbiasedness, because again, like my earlier example, the Knight of Coins is someone who might count every blade of grass in the field if you told him to. So let's wrap this up with our bookend question, which is, what is a relevant lesson that this past life has for me today? So let's do this card, and this card, and this card. So what is a relevant lesson that this past life has for me today? All right, so surprisingly this time we do not have any of the cards from the past reading. So let's put these together. Part of what makes a fun or interesting tarot reading is the physical aspect of it. I think laying out these cards and seeing how it all comes together in the end is so satisfying to me, and it makes such a cool experience. The relevant lesson, Queen of Cups, Queen of Coins, and then the Magician. Interestingly, we've got 2 court cards, we've got 2 queens, before we had 2 kings. I also see that the Knight of Coins has graduated to become the Queen of Coins here. So with the message of 2 queens popping up, something that comes to mind is it's okay to focus on yourself. Not just it's okay, but it might also be important to focus on yourself and prioritize yourself. So I'm seeing with the kings, I associate the kings with managing other people and mentoring other people. Some people have a tendency to want to mentor or to help or to, be directors. And I think with this queen, with these 2 queens coming up, it gives you the idea that I don't have to pressure myself to be a director or be a mentor all the time. It's okay for me to fill up my own cup and have my own gifts and let my gifts shine through me, rather than me having to always direct or instruct or, mentor other people. I'm seeing that with the Magician. I'm still creating. I'm still able to create good things or create whatever I want to do, even if I turn my energy inward. But I do want to see, how can I connect this advice, this lesson, to what we were just reading and asking about earlier? So one thing that I see is that with the Queen of Cups, I connect it with the 10 of Cups because same suit. So one thing I'm seeing or remembering is that when I have happy moments or chances for happiness, it's important for me to nurture them and keep holding on to them and keep allowing them to happen, rather than being resistant to happy moments or trying to write them off. So take note of when things feel good. Make room for the full breadth of emotions that I have, including things that feel good. And I'm seeing with the Queen of Coins here, something that I did well in my past life was putting work into relationships. So that is a reminder that I can continue putting in work in my relationships in this life, continuing creating a safe space, continuing learning and growing, and just putting in the work that is needed to maintain my relationships. And with the Magician, again, there's just an idea that I have the ability to create. These things inside me make me a stronger person. Focusing on myself makes me a stronger and more capable person. It doesn't make me selfish or incapable. I have to take care of myself and nurture myself and things that I hold dear so that I can become and continue being a more creative or productive person. Even though I don't feel super solid or super confident about this reading, the important part of this reading is that it was an interesting storytelling exercise for me And it was an interesting tarot reading exercise. Again, I'm practicing weaving cards together. I'm practicing having a conversation with my cards. And I'm practicing bookending, trying to tie these cards back to previous parts of the reading. I'm also practicing how to find common themes within these cards and how to pull these themes together to create a cohesive or interesting story. So I feel like those kinds of techniques are very helpful for all types of tarot and divination readings, not just, the specific past life reading. So that is my method for past life readings. And I want to share that in October when I did my whole marathon of past life readings, I was so genuinely surprised that people actually found these readings helpful and interesting. People were sharing them with each other and people were just giving me feedback that it was really interesting. People were able to connect these to experiences that their grandparents had or that their friends had or that they had in their younger selves. So it was just a really interesting thought exercise and an interesting tarot exercise for me to perform and for people to receive as readings. Humans like to find meaning in anything. We're always searching for answers, even when we didn't realize that we had any questions. So I hope that you give this a try. It's a fun, safe exercise for you to really stretch your brain and making connections between all these different cards and in relation to the different follow-up questions that you're asking and the different answers that you're getting. And I say this is a safe exercise because I feel like this way, framing it as like a past life reading, it made me feel more free to interpret the cards any way that I wanted. Because I'm not worrying as much about the reading being accurate to like your current life. I don't have to worry about the clairant coming back and saying, well, I actually don't put in work to my relationships. Or like, well, I don't feel like I'm an executive. The clairant can't deny what you're saying because we can just say, oh, well, it's a past life. It's not related as much to your current life. Because I'm not worried about the accuracy of the cards to the person's current life, I can just focus on trying to weave the cards together and trying to explore the cards as a abstract, almost like made up person. It's only the last question that really brings it back to the clairant or to the present. And even then, you just have to focus on reading the cards, especially again, as it relates to this past life that you had. Like, I don't have to worry about applying even this lesson to the clairant's current life. Now, is this just glorified and make-believe storytelling? Well, that's up to you to decide. If it's still meaningful and it helps, does it really matter? That is the magic of tarot, whether you believe or whether you're skeptical. So that is it. That is my method for secular past life readings. Now, may you go forth and try practicing telling stories for yourself and for your friends and wow them with how you're so accurate in telling them about this past life that is so relevant to their current life. If you have any questions or any unclear spots, please let me know in the comments. I may add some addendums or extra answers or questions to the description box if they are helpful. That is all for today. I will see you in another video. Bye!